Detective Marcus Hale leaned back in his chair, staring at the stack of reports that had just arrived from the archive. The case seemed simple: a single homicide, clean evidence, no witnesses. But one document didn't fit. The report was stamped "Filed, April 12." The problem was that the murder had taken place on April 13. At first, Hale thought it was a typo. Clerical errors happened all the time. But when he looked closer, he noticed the signature at the bottom. It was his partner's, Detective Leah Quinn, and it wasn't copied. It was original ink. He flipped through the pages. The report listed the victim's name, cause of death, and even the address. All correct. But the timestamp in the corner was unmistakable. Someone had written this report before the crime existed. Hale walked down the hall to Quinn's desk. She was reviewing photos, her coffee untouched. "You filed something early?" he asked, holding up the report. She frowned. "No. What is that?" "Your handwriting. Your signature. Filed yesterday." She took the paper, her brow tightening. "That's not possible. I was home all night." "Records show your ID badge accessed the system at 9:27 p.m. That's when this was uploaded." Quinn's eyes darkened. "My badge has been missing since Monday. I told admin." Hale's mind started connecting dots. Then someone used your credentials to create a report before the body was even found. He glanced at the top of the page again. Beneath the printed time was a faint second line, half erased: draft copy, internal review. He looked at Quinn. Internal review of what? She shook her head slowly. There wasn't an internal review scheduled this week. That meant one thing: someone inside the department predicted the crime, or staged it. Hale set the report down carefully, his voice low. Whoever wrote this didn't just know what would happen. They wanted it on record before it did. He turned toward the evidence board, the sound of distant phones echoing through the hallway. For the first time in years, he felt the cold weight of something calculated, not random, not reckless, but designed. Detective Marcus Hale sat in the evidence lab, the report laid flat beneath a protective sleeve. The printed date stared back at him like a silent accusation: April 12. One day too early, but everything else matched perfectly. Across the table, Leah Quinn scrolled through system logs. "Whoever used my ID didn't just forge the document," she said. "They logged in through my terminal. That means they had my workstation password too." Hale frowned. "So, someone from inside?" "Not necessarily," she replied. "If IT left my session open during maintenance, anyone on the network could have accessed it." He knew she was right, but something about her tone made him uneasy. Quinn had been his partner for 5 years, sharp and steady, yet now there was hesitation in her voice that hadn't been there before. Hale leaned back, thinking. "Let's pull the security footage from the precinct hallway, see who entered the lab last night." Within minutes, the technician loaded the feed. The camera showed an empty corridor until 9:25 p.m. when a tall figure appeared, face half hidden by a cap. The person swiped a badge and walked directly into Quinn's office. The feed timestamp: April 12, 9:27 p.m. "Zoom in," Hale said. The figure's profile came into focus, just enough to make out a detail that didn't belong. The cap bore the department's own emblem. Uniform. Could be anyone. "No," Hale said quietly. "Not anyone. Look at the shoulder patch." She squinted. The reflection caught a thin silver outline. Detective rank. Only 6 detectives in our unit had that patch, and only 3 had access to internal review files. Hale opened the personnel list. "We're down to me, you, and Lieutenant Price." Quinn crossed her arms. Price wouldn't risk his badge for this. Maybe not. But the report wasn't just a mistake, it was bait. Bait for what? Hale flipped through the document again. Each section ended with the same initials, LP. He looked up slowly. They're not just his initials, Leah. They're authorization marks. Price signed this before the body was found. Quinn went pale. You think he's involved? Hale didn't answer. He just folded the report carefully and slid it into an evidence envelope. Let's not accuse anyone yet. But if Price wrote this report early, we're not investigating a homicide anymore. He met her eyes. We're investigating a cover-up. The precinct was unusually quiet that night, the kind of silence that meant people knew something they weren't supposed to. Detective Marcus Hale could feel it as he walked past the bullpen. Conversations paused, glances followed. Word had spread that Internal Affairs was reviewing irregular documentation. He and Leah Quinn slipped into Conference Room 3, shutting the blinds. The folder with the predated report lay between them like a live wire. I checked the log server, Quinn said, lowering her voice. The document was uploaded through Lieutenant Price's profile, but the access point came from the operations room, not his office. Hale frowned. That room logs every keystroke. Did you pull the data? She nodded and slid over a printed sheet. The file history showed one crucial line. User, L. Price. Action, print draft, case 417A. Time, April 12th, 9:28 p.m. Terminal ID, OPS 03. OPS 03 wasn't Price's terminal. It belonged to the shared operations room used for evidence processing, and it stayed unlocked most nights. Hale tapped the timestamp. So Price's credentials were used, but not his machine. Right, Quinn said. Meaning someone cloned his ID or borrowed his access key. Or, Hale said quietly, he gave it to them. She hesitated. You think he'd risk his entire career? Hale didn't answer. He reached for the intercom and called the night sergeant. I need the duty log for April 12th, every name on site between 8 and 10 p.m. Minutes later, a printout slid under the door. Hale spread it across the table. 7 names. Only one stood out. L.T. D. Price. Signed out at 8:15 p.m. That's the same time his credentials were used an hour later, Quinn said. If he was gone, who stayed behind? Hale scanned the rest of the list. 2 patrol officers, 1 clerk, 1 custodian, 1 IT technician. Harold Denton. He circled the name. IT handles the system credentials. If someone needed to clone a user ID, he could do it. Denton? Quinn asked. He's harmless. He's been here 15 years. Hale opened his phone and pulled up Denton's personnel record. No disciplinary history, no flags. But one detail caught his attention. Temporary assignment, Internal Audit Liaison for Lieutenant Price's division. He exhaled. So our harmless technician reports directly to Price. Quinn's expression hardened. You think they work together? I think, Hale said, folding the duty log, that the wrong person is controlling what gets written and when. And if this report was filed before the crime, someone wasn't recording history. He looked toward the glass window where the glow from the bullpen lights flickered through the blinds. They were writing the future. Detective Marcus Hale drove to Harold Denton's home just after sunset. The small, one-story house sat at the edge of the city, its porch light flickering with every gust of wind. Inside, a faint blue glow from a computer screen spilled through the curtains. He didn't bother calling for backup. If Denton was guilty, He wouldn't fight, he'd explain. And if he was innocent, Hale wanted to see his face when he asked the right question. He knocked once. The door opened within seconds. Denton stood there, still in his work shirt, surprise quickly replaced by something closer to resignation. "Detective Hale," he said quietly. "I figured you'd come sooner or later." "Then you know why I'm here." Denton nodded, stepping aside. "You're looking for the April 12th draft." Hale entered the living room. It looked more like an archive than a home. Boxes of printed records, binders stacked on every shelf. On the desk, the precinct login portal glowed faintly. "I need to know who told you to write that report." "I didn't write it, but I built the system that allowed someone else to." Hale studied him carefully. "Start talking." Denton rubbed the back of his neck. "A few months ago, Price asked me to set up a secondary review system, a duplicate server that could create time-stamped drafts for active investigations. He said it was for training scenarios. I didn't question it, but last week he told me to upload an example report under Quinn's ID. I assumed it was a simulation." "It wasn't," Hale said. "I know," Denton answered. "When I saw the news about the homicide the next day, I checked the server. The report I uploaded was still there, with details that matched the crime exactly. Price must have used that system to frame the timeline." Hale leaned closer. "Did you keep a backup?" Denton nodded towards an external drive. "Every file, every access log. I couldn't erase it, not after what I saw." Hale took the drive and slipped it into an evidence bag. "You realize this puts you in the middle of a conspiracy, Denton." "I realize it's the only proof you'll get," Denton said. "Price doesn't make mistakes. He's been doing this for years, adjusting records after cases close. This time, he tested whether he could write one before it started." Hale stared at him. "Why?" Denton hesitated, then whispered, "Because the case isn't about murder, detective. It's about who controls what becomes true." Before Hale could respond, his phone buzzed, a message from Quinn. "Do not come back. Price knows." Hale's grip tightened around the evidence bag. For the first time, the timeline didn't scare him. The silence did. Detective Marcus Hale drove through the empty streets, the city lights sliding over the windshield in quick flashes. Quinn's message sat open on the passenger seat, its words replaying in his mind. "Do not come back. Price knows." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. If Price already knew, it meant Denton wasn't the only one being watched. When he arrived at the precinct, the parking lot was nearly empty, except for Price's sedan, parked crooked under the security light. The building inside was dark, except for the faint glow from the operations room. Hale walked in quietly. The hum of the servers filled the air, steady and mechanical. He followed it down the corridor until he saw the light through the glass. Lieutenant Price stood inside, coat off, sleeves rolled, typing fast. "Evening, Lieutenant," Hale said from the doorway. "You shouldn't be here, Marcus." "Neither should you." Hale stepped closer. "You built a shadow system and used it to alter reports before they were filed." "That's a strong accusation." "I've got the logs. Every file, every signature. Denton gave me everything." For the first time, Price's expression shifted. Not fear, but disappointment. "You still think this is about one forged document?" Hale frowned. "You tell me." Price leaned against the desk. "You ever wonder why certain cases close faster than others? Why some disappear entirely? The department doesn't like loose ends, Marcus. I just made sure the story fit before the facts did." "That's not justice," Hale said coldly. "It's efficiency."
You can't clean a system by following every rule inside it. Hale shook his head. You wrote that report before the victim was even found. Because I knew she'd be found, Price said quietly. We had surveillance on her suspect. She was in danger, but the department wouldn't approve an intervention warrant. So, I made one. Hale stared at him. You falsified the record to force action. I saved time. She died anyway. The silence between them was sharp. Hale set the evidence bag on the desk. That drive contains enough proof to end your career. Price looked at it, then back at him. And if you hand it over, what changes? The next case, the next name, the next mistake? It'll happen again. You'll just have another paper trail to chase. Hale's jaw tightened. Maybe, but at least it'll be an honest one. He turned toward the door. Price didn't stop him. As he walked out, Hale felt the weight of the evidence drive in his hand, heavier than it should have been. Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light cutting through the clouds. He knew Price was right about one thing. The truth could be rewritten, but not erased. And as long as someone kept track of the first version, it would never stay buried for long.